Hello everyone, Father Hoffa here with your next installation of the WW Wednesday Wonder. A lot of times people wonder, what is it that I'm missing in life? What is it that's stopping me from being able to live a life like Christ, the Christian life that I'm called to? What is it that's keeping me from happiness? Real, pure happiness. And I would offer that one of the big things that is missing is selflessness. Selflessness is at the root of the gospel. It's at the root of the person of Jesus Christ. It's at the root of the cross. And selflessness is something that is so necessary in our world. And, as I've started out this series on marriage in the Wednesday Wonder, that is something that comes up often. It comes up when I'm talking to young people in preparing them for marriage, but it also comes up with couples who are struggling in their marriage. Over time, because of neglect, because of old habits, and the list goes on, persons turn in on themselves and they look to support themselves instead of the mutual exchange that is supposed to happen in relationship. And I think that that's one of the big things that, when we've talked about love and all of these things, and that the opposite of love is use, and that, to love is to will to good to the other, and all of these things, it comes down to a willingness to be other-centered, which will actually fulfill us, and at the same time understanding that there will be a mutual self-gift from the other person to take care of our needs as well. We have to call it out when that's not the case, and that's just. But at the same time, we can't come from a standpoint of saying, I'm going to take care of me and me alone, or me first. The world oftentimes tells us that's a good way to live, and actually, it's a terrible way to live. It's not a life-giving way to live. This past weekend, as I was watching College Game Day, which is something that I love to do on a regular basis on a Saturday morning from 9 until 12 noon, College Game Day's on. And it's gone through iterations. I've been watching College Game Day since I was a kid. I can remember back in the day. Of course, this year they just retired Lee Corso, who has always been a great part of College Game Day, and they did a great send-off for him. But over the course of these last few years, they've added some new people. And one of the people that they added was Coach Nick Saban. Now, I will be the first one to admit, and a lot of people who know me and my feelings about football is they can't believe that I would say this, but I'm becoming a Nick Saban fan. Now, I was not a Nick Saban fan, especially when he was the coach at Alabama. I was not an Alabama fan. You wouldn't. They're just teams that I'm not a fan of. Alabama was one of them. Nick Saban was one of those coaches. However, when he's not doing the actual coaching, but he is talking about the game, and Nick Saban would probably be like the Bill Belichick of college football. Bill Belichick was considered, to be this great mind in pro football. He's not doing too great at UNC right now, but Nick Saban was a great football coach because he had great themes and ideologies and methods that helped him to coach players to greatness. And this past week, he shared this morsel that so beautifully applies to the Christian life. And he said this when speaking to his players: you don't practice to get it right. You practice until you can't get it wrong. And I had the blessing yesterday of being able to celebrate the feast day masses at the National Center for Padre Pio. And as I was at the National Center, I said this in my homily, and people just took a moment of gasp. And so I'm going to read it for you again because it really does apply. You don't practice to get it right. You practice until you can't get it wrong. And I think that is oftentimes something that we do, especially in our practices in the Christian life. We just do things so we can get it right for that one time, that one instance, that one person. But are we actually doing it in such a way, living our lives, so that we never get it wrong? Now, again, we're not perfect people, but I'll tell you this much. If we're practicing every day not to get it wrong, and we're practicing so that we can't get it wrong, man, what a difference that would make. And what if we applied that to selflessness? What if every day we were living in a way that we couldn't get selflessness wrong? That's godliness. That's Christ-like. That's who we're called to be. And so, my friends, if you've been wondering, what's wrong with this world? What's wrong with my struggles in being able to be other-centered? What's wrong with my relationships? Look at Jesus. Look at the joy he had, even in struggle. He was a self-giver. He was a self-sacrificer. He gave of himself, and it changed the world. So too can we do that. But it's not just so that we get it right every once in a while, or when it's just necessary, but that we live every single day building ourselves up and building one another up so that we can't get it wrong. God gives us the grace to do it. Let's do it with him. This has been your next installment of the Wednesday Wonder. God bless and have a great day.